So Tom's on. Sarah Watson could not make it tonight to our park committee meeting either, so. You want to get started and talk about the fundraising event?
Yeah.
I'll unmute. Park, and we can still talk about this weekend at least to.
Yeah, yep.
All right, so we don't have a quorum. We call the meeting to
Do you
order.
have your microphone on?
There we go.
No, try.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we can call the meeting to order. Since we don't have a quorum, we can't approve the minutes. So we've got the park construction budget update, discussion of fundraising. And then I think we had another item on there. Did you add?
It's kind of under the timeline.
Okay,
Talk about it.
okay. Do we want to jump to that fundraising event first?
Yeah, since
Just-
you don't have a quorum, you can do whatever you'd like.
I know. So I had started the flyer, we were talking about doing this Saturday for a first, like a, kind of an opening at the park as a fundraiser. I started the flyer and I apologize for not finishing it. We ended up at the oncology vet this weekend, or this week, so. Yeah. But I checked the weather today and it's a high of 8 on Saturday. And looking back at our notes from last time, we had talked about, anything pretty much under, I had a 15 degrees, that we would not do it. So if there's any thoughts on that.
Well, my thought is, looking at the Weather Channel right now, it says high of 6, low of 12 below with a 13-mile-an-hour northwest wind. And without having any advertising, I'd say let's pass on this particular one.
You don't like that temp either? Pat?
I was thinking, just, you were loose, with your planning, and so if you wanted to go to the, just shoot for the next Saturday. That'd work.
Next Saturday is the 13th of February, and high of 22, and with an 8-mile-an-hour.
Yeah,
wind. Now, that sounds better.
Yeah, that's much better. And that was my thought too. We talked about doing the first Saturday in February and then the first in March. But, yeah, there isn't any reason why we couldn't. And we're supposed to get snow this Thursday, so we should have more snow on the ground. And then that cold weather will help kind of set that, so that should be good for the turf, I would think.
Yeah, it'd be better.
Okay,
And by having one more week, we'll be able to get word out.
yeah.
Because right now, nobody knows about it.
No, then I can just tweak the flyer a little bit and
Yeah.
get that out. Okay, I'll reach out to, just make sure that everybody is kind of on board and aware of that.
Are you thinking Saturday at the same times as what you were thinking for this week?
Yeah, we had 11 to 3 written down for the time.
Okay. That's the 13th, right?
Yes. Ooh, we could give it a Valentine's theme. And then I think we still, obviously, we'll still kind of keep if the weather does change, we'll kind of keep that disclaimer on there too. Just,
Tom, are you okay with that?
I couldn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Oh, are you okay? They're talking about changing it instead of this Saturday, moving it to Saturday the 13th, just the next Saturday? Because the temperature is supposed to be much higher.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Then Jamie will update the flyer and she'll get it out to, she can get it to me and then we can send it out to the committee and we can disperse it on the different avenues that we have. And I will let, I've got the phone number of a couple of people at Channel 7, because we've been working with them on Silver Hill, so I will just send them a text that this is happening, and they can maybe do a couple of stories on it. So.
yeah, we've gotten good coverage from them, so. Okay, all right, park construction budget updates.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pass one of these. Ted, I don't know if you want a copy of this, but you can, and again, if you guys want a copy of this, it's public information, so that's the budget. I did email it out, so Tom, it hasn't changed from the last one I emailed out to everybody. There's 2 copies there, right? Do you need more? So the one thing that I was asked to do at the last meeting was to look at the pricing of the shelter. So everything in black is received, or, there's 2 things we haven't received yet, but we know that the Community Foundation is coming. But as far as the actual costs, the ones that are in gray, light gray, we know we've spent, I just haven't seen them come through our ledgers yet, so they're not in official, that's why I don't have paid next to them. Except for the concrete and the concrete for the shelter. That was just an estimate that I was asked to get at the last meeting for our open air shelter that we wanted. So we got a couple of cost estimates, but the larger of the 2, 20 by 24 shelter, at a cost estimate is just over, around $22,600. And then the concrete pad for that would be just under $8,000. So I did put that into the full expenditures, and you could see even if we did purchase that, then there is still $11,300 remaining for agility equipment. Plus, remember, which is part of this that we were going to talk about, is for the naming rights of the park, for the Two Hearts Dog Park, we had requested a difference of $17,000 for that naming of the park, because we had the agility equipment in there. I just had it in front of me. And I had the cost estimates for everything. I gotta find where I put, just had it in my hand. So really we have the 17 plus the 11,000, so about 28,000. We would have left over but part of that 17,000 will cover the entrance sign, which he told me right now is about 4,000 for what he's looking at. So if you take 17 plus the 11 minus 4, we're at about $24,000 left over for that agility equipment, for any other benches that you might want to add, for any other amenities you'd want to put into the park. So I guess I want some direction on, and you can't necessarily vote on this because we don't have a quorum, but you could provide me with some direction and we can actually vote on it next meeting, I guess, is do we want to move forward with that shelter and put that in the works for the spring to get that in? And then I can bring at the next meeting, here it is, a copy of, or a couple of flyers for agility equipment, if you wanted to include that in the park, and we can look at what, types of things you're looking at and we can get some pricing on those. The other big part so I'm looking at our construction phase estimates where we had gotten this. the different numbers from is we've already done the fencing, we've done the asphalt parking lot, we've done the turf. Signage will pretty much be done. The way stations were done. Right now, we're not planning to put in any wood chips path. We're gonna just work with the grass and then see where the wear patterns go. We've put in the water line, we put in the drinking fountain, we put in some benches. Here we have 4 benches going in right now. We had a cost estimate for 9. So that's something more that you can add with the funds remaining is some more benches throughout. We talked about a shade structure. Now, we only had 15,000 budgeted for the shade structure because I believe that was a smaller structure. So we could scale it down to a smaller structure. But the direction I had was that we wanted to fit about 3 or 4 picnic tables underneath it. So that 20 by 24 is really a good size for that, but we can get smaller ones. And then we got the sidewalk in, and then the only other thing is whether or not we ever wanted to irrigate it. That was a kind of something that was going to be a phased approach to irrigate the park. The cost estimate on irrigating it is $26,000. So either you could irrigate it and not do agility equipment and do the shelter. You could irrigate it or not irrigate it, do the agility equipment and the shelter, not do the shelter, irrigate it and the agility equipment. I think those are our options right now with the funding that we currently have and have pledged to come in. The group could always look for additional funding that could do all of it, but that's kind of where we are at with budget right now. So one other thing, though, I wanted to talk about with the naming of the park is originally we didn't give Mr. West a drop dead date for when we had to have the funds by. However, I looked back and we did say we needed the funds to complete the park. So technically, we were hoping to complete the park in the fall of this last year. Because we didn't have good enough turf, we were able to postpone that a little bit. That's the direction I had given him just recently about, we do need these funds coming in to complete the park. We plan to complete the park in the spring. But I think that it's worth talking about with the committee that this is something we probably need to decide on a deadline for. We do have other significant donors that are probably or are interested in the naming of it if this does not come through. So I wanted the committee to kind of give me some direction on that. And Tom, I will actually forward you this email right now. We got 2 designs, preliminary designs from Brian on the entrance sign. Here, I'll show you this. We got this one, which I'll email these to you, Tom, so you can see them. We got this one from Graphic House, and then the other one is right here, and this one is from, I can't remember exactly where, it's in the email, I'll find it. He likes the Graphic House one a little bit better, which is the black and the red one, but I've also printed out his email where he's asking them to change a little bit with the drawing in the middle. So I think the discussion I'd like to have is, what are you looking for as, do we want to move forward with shelter and start getting that in the works? We can talk about what other things we want to look at the next meeting with the funding that we have remaining, whether it's irrigation or agility equipment. And then I think we need to talk about your thoughts on these signs, the entrance signs, so we can give that back to Brian and let him know your thoughts. But also, we need to have probably a date that he needs to fulfill this obligation for so we can know how we're proceeding as we plan to open the park. So I guess I'll open it up for discussion as I email you this to you, Tom.
Okay, I have a question then on the estimates on the shelter. What's the cost differential between the larger and smaller? I don't have it in front of me.
No, I didn't provide it, but, and I knew you were going to ask me that once I pull it up, but I'll pull that email up here shortly too. I believe it was $5,000, but I have that right here in front of me, I'll grab it and I'll let you know.
You know, just if memory serves, you know, that's a significant amount of money, and the change in the size is not that great. It seems to me I'd kind of lean towards a smaller shelter and then using that money for other purposes like agility equipment or other amenities. That's just my thought.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was able to pull up the email, so it looks like the 16 by 24 was 18,865.
okay. Yeah, so about a little less than $4,000.
Yeah, so about 4,000. Did we have anything, or do we need to include in the budget then some picnic tables to go in there too? Or is that something we have excess of?
Yeah, the picnic tables is something we provide at all the parks, so I don't think that's something you really need to put into the,
Okay.
I'll make a note that we want a few out there.
I can agree with what Tom's saying too. I think the smaller, because, I mean, you're gonna have people that are going to, will sit and stuff under there, but not, I think you'll find people out walking a lot more.
So the 16 by 20, is that what we have?
I think it's 16 by 24, I think it said.
Yeah, and for the budget purposes, I just put in the larger shelter so that we could see what an impact that would be on our budget, but if we go with the 16 by 24, I
How
don't know
big
that
are,
we're really losing much square footage.
how big are the picnic tables?
I think they are, you're asking me all these hard questions.
I know, so,
I think they're 8 feet long.
yeah, and about 4 feet wide?
Yes, probably about 4 feet
Okay.
wide. Yeah, there's about
Okay.
3 planks and then the 2, so
Yeah.
4 to 5 feet wide. And we'll have to have one ADA one out there as well.
Yes,
So that's a little bit longer.
yeah, so that'd be 4 by 10. And a 16 by 20 shelter would really only hold 2
Yeah,
tables.
2,
Yeah.
maybe 3, yeah,
Yeah, I think the smaller shelter would be good.
okay. Okay, so group
Works for me.
consensus is to look at the smaller shelter going forward, right? 16 by 24, or do you want me to even look, I mean, I can get pricing for a 16 by 20. Or a 20 by 20.
Well, yeah, it's good to, you know, have those options and then, you know what the price differentials are and,
Okay,
you know, what we might or might not, you know, use money for elsewise, like, you know, like agility equipment or something.
okay, I'll get some more pricing and we have more to choose from then.
Yeah, I think like a 20 by 20 would be interesting to see.
Yeah, this is a little bit out of the shelter realm, but and I know you're not going to make a decision on this tonight, but on the irrigation, I think that's an investment in that facility that you would never regret. I really think it would keep the turf in a lot better condition, and it would, you know, it does sound a little extravagant to quote irrigate unquote a dog park, but I really think it would be a good investment, and 26,000. If it could be, if it possibly can be done, I think it would be smart.
We can maybe get a more updated quote for that too.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask Jamie, if we could get that, I mean, that number I think goes back to about 4 years ago. And I don't know if that was an actual quote or just a ballpark at the time.
Okay.
You know, I grew up across the street from a city park down in Milwaukee, and I just remember, you know, those spray, you know, apparatus they would just wheel out and hook up to a hose and have at it. So, you know, if that is an option, you know, I guess it would require more manpower because it would have to be set up and taken down on a regular basis versus maybe on a timer. But what is the feasibility of something like that?
I could talk with my staff and see, yeah, I'm not sure that we set those out at any other parks, because I think we just have the irrigation on a timer where we do. But I do know we put them out for temporary, like if we're establishing just a small area of turf, will put out some watering sprinklers, to get that established, but they don't usually stay out long-term. But I can discuss that and see.
I wonder too if it'd be necessary to do the whole, if we'd want to do the whole park, if we're doing that too, or mainly focus on the front area that's going to probably get a lot more of the wear and tear. Because I know eventually we talked about doing a path, you had brought that up too, a path kind of where it was walking. I think looking at some of the, like the dog parks here and other ones that I've been at, the most wear and tear happens right in that front area, because that's where the people congregate, and, they might go, the dogs might run and people might walk a loop, but most of the hard playing is done in that center area, and the, just people standing around too, so that might be something to look at too.
Yeah. It might be something too that we want to have one season where we go through and kind of see where the wear and tear is, and then make the decision on that too.
I would like to see some information then on agility equipment too, for
Yep.
our next meeting, if you've got some of that, so we could get an idea.
I've got some flyers for sure. I don't know if it has pricing with it, but at least we could look at what types of equipment you're interested in, and then we can get pricing based on that.
And, just I'll throw it out there again, is it possible for somebody to get in touch with, like, county materials, or whoever, provided the big boulders out by the birds, to see if we might, be able to get some of that kind of natural, landscaping, as sort of like a natural form of agility equipment, for dogs to jump up on or jump over or whatever.
Do we know where, was that county materials, or did that maybe come from like Kafka or something? Do we know it all? Or
I
even
don't know.
down by the
I can
river?
check with city engineering, I'm not sure.
Okay. Because there's a lot of those down on the river walk too.
Yeah, the Whitewater group got donated from some quarry. You can see they got ridges in, they were all remnants of other ones being broken apart, so that's how they got those at a good deal, but, I can ask them too where they got those.
They still have the dynamite markings.
I can just,
Yeah, because county materials and Kafka, I think, are pretty much the two that we have around here that might have something like that.
There's a rose quarry out in the town of Texas.
I'll ask where they got them from, then we can go from there.
Yeah. No, I don't think it's county materials. I think it's Rose Quarry. I've been there once or twice.
The one concern I know I have with both the rocks and the agility equipment is the amount of staff time it's going to take to work around them. And that's a major concern for me, because right now where we have large boulders places, we usually just spray around them and then you just have a ring of dead grass. So, going forward, it would be nice to have a volunteer group also that's helping kind of help maintain the dog park, because we keep adding things, but we're not adding any staff. So that's something that I do have a concern with for both of those pieces.
Yes, and once you put one of those boulders in, they ain't moving.
No.
Wherever they land is where they are.
Well, I think that was something we talked about too early on, was having kind of a, whether it's like a spring and a fall, friends, I think it was Tom maybe came up with like Friends of the Dog Park or something like that. Basically a cleanup day.
Yeah. We can discuss that further. I do know, I want you to keep that in mind as we place those things, what the maintenance might require and what it might look like, or what maybe some other options are for even around them. Maybe we do put some wood chips around them or some sort of other material that will help with the weeds growing up around the posts. And
Yeah, I'm trying to think, I don't have my folder on me, but there was that webinar, Jamie, that you and I both
Oh, yeah.
that watched, and I know the flyer that, or like the pamphlet that they put out, they had some like, I don't want to say turf, but even like some rubber mats underneath some of that equipment, so maybe something even like that.
Yeah, I'll
could
pull
look
that
at.
out, I have that. in my folder.
Can't shut up. One of the things that I was discussed early on in this whole package was the possibility of like a Friends of Our Dog Park organization. And if that group would weed around the rocks while they're running their dogs or something like that, it could be a citizen duty to tidy up around rocks and landscaping features and stuff like that. And if people were kind of felt empowered to do that, they could do that when they, grab 3 weeds when they walk by the rock. I don't know, a possibility.
Yeah, I think a number of the dog parks that we surveyed, when we initially did all that surveys, quite a few of them had some kind of a group like that. That whether it was organized or it was just kind of people who took care of things. I know early on when I used to frequent the Weston one, there was a group of us that were Saturday mornings that like, usually when we were there the first Saturday, we all grabbed extra bags and, that was just kind of what we did. We picked up. But I think having something a little more organized would be good.
That might kind of take shape organically, too.
Yep,
Yeah, I think some of the people that will frequent the park are gonna kind of take care of some of that and even police it somewhat.
okay. So we've got some things that I'll look into for the park construction and the budget going forward. As far as the entrance signs and those 2 ideas, any thoughts, suggestions on those that you want me to pass on to Brian? And then also timeline. I think we need to implement a timeline for making sure that this goes forward.
We actually had for the opening of the park, right?
That's what we had said, yeah, but we don't have a date set. I think if we, right now we have money in the budget to pay for the sign, but I would hate to put the sign up and then the funding doesn't come through and then it's not going to be named that or something. So right now, the council did make that decision to allow them to have the naming rights for that 17,000 something. We need, I think, to make it fair to us as a committee, and also fair to him, to knowing that he's putting this effort in and it's going forward, is to give a timeline. And if that just can't be met, then it will have to come back to the Parks Committee for discussion on the naming rights and how to proceed, because they've already by resolution accepted that, and then something else can be considered at that time, or, whatever actions are taken. But
I think that the naming is not a really huge item in terms of, opening the park and whatnot at this time. I mean, it can generically be known as, the Wausau, downtown dog park, as just like it's, doing business as name until we can finalize, purchase naming. And then that can happen whenever it happens. So I don't see it as something we need to get antsy about, really.
Has Brian given any money? Has any of his pledges, 17.5, come forward?
no, not at this time.
No. So I agree with Tom, we should hold off, but also he should come up with what he said he would before we put the sign in.
Right, definitely before the sign-in, but also, like I said, you can see with the shelter, if we go forward with the shelter, whether it's 11,000 left over or 15,000 left over, that's all you have left over. That 17 or 13 of the 17 that you requested of him was to pretty much finish off the dog park with the agility equipment or irrigation or whatever it is. So you can't finish the dog park without the funding. We don't
Sure.
have, you know, so that's the other side of it, is not necessarily that the sign is up, it's that you're counting on that funding to kind of finish the dog park too,
Yeah.
so,
So I agree, he should be given a deadline, and he first proposed it on February of 2020, so actually it was a year ago, February 3rd, said my notes.
Oh.
Yes, he proposed this, and I don't know, give him until 1st of June? I'm just pulling the date out of the air.
Mhm.
So that would give him February, March, April, May, June, give him 5 months.
yeah, I mean, that's an option, so I guess I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts, because that's where we're at budget-wise right now.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and I do think we need an update from him, because I know he's done some, he's had some boxes and stuff around town, so.
Yeah. His email to me, that was part of the sign email, was that, I printed it out. I know he's emailed a couple times over the winter, and COVID really put a damper on any fundraising he had done, and then he was sick with it, and then he had friends sick with it. He's had a rough year, I believe, from his emails. So he said he was hoping to get his group kind of back discussing it, and I think Midwest Communications, where Deb had worked, was going to be somewhat of a larger sponsor, and I don't know that that's come to fruition, so he was going to check on that. But he says as far as the funding, nothing has changed. He's really, I mean, if we need it, he said he'd write the check out of his own personal account tomorrow and then work on, you know, fundraising later. It's a big amount for him. He doesn't have it, but he said he would do it because it means that much. But he said, he's going to do one last push with the Community Foundation and other groups of friends so they can try to lighten the burden on him, as to not have to write the whole amount out of his own pocket. And then he's working with Graphic House or the other company, which was Stratford Signs, depending on which one he likes better to go with, to donate part of the cost of the sign to, so that would be less of a cost there. So, so as far as whether or not he's received any funding, it does not look like it, but he isn't necessarily not going to try or not working on it
Okay.
anymore.
So I think first, I mean, we can't, obviously we don't have a quorum, so we can't vote.
Right.
And I think that's something we need to vote on, is to give him a date, so I think it's something we need to discuss next time, but I'd like to request that he gives us an update.
Sure.
Whether he wants to join in, or, you know, maybe he can, you know, even if he doesn't, you can join in WebEx, he can come, or
Yep.
even just a written update.
He does get these meetings and agendas, so he has the ability to join in and he sees them, so I will make sure that he gives an update at the next.
I can even pick him up. He doesn't live very far from me. Go past his house a lot.
Yeah, I can do that. And then he can give us an update. Do you
Yeah,
have any?
I know we have those fundraising boxes out, so, I mean, obviously he's raised some money there. You know, I also don't want to push him so much that he takes himself into debt.
You're right.
To do this, so.
Yep. Okay, well, we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting. I'll ask him to be here to get an update, and hopefully we'll have a quorum.
And for the record, I like the black sign.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Any comments on the signs that I can pass on to him as well?
I kind of like the blue one. Both are nice. But I like the blue one better.
Okay, so we have a vote for the blue one, a vote for the black one. Tom, which one do you like better? Or any comments on the design?
Can I see them real quick again on screen?
Oh, yeah, did you get my email? Too?
Well, it's not convenient for me to get to the email.
Oh. Yep, I just emailed them to you. Okay, so this is first one.
Mhm.
Sorry, I can't
Okay.
get it straight. That's the first one. And This is the second one.
Yeah, I like that one for some reason.
Yep. The
It's
black
got a
one.
little bit more emotional content for me.
Okay. Well, I will pass those comments on to Brian. Personally, I like the black one also. But I think he's working on them, so we'll give him some feedback. What did you like about the blue one? Anything that, in particular?
Well, I like the fact that it spells out the word
Oh,
two,
two,
as
okay.
opposed to the number two.
Yep.
Plus, the heart motif that Deb drew, to the person who doesn't know the story, would say, "What's that?"
Now, we will have, I think the idea was we would put the story out there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, I agree.
Yeah, so, and that's why, but I think the cardinals are really cool. Oh,
Yeah, that was the only thing in the black one is, and I mean, I know where the drawing comes from, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of,
Otherwise, what's that thing?
Yeah.
yeah. And maybe that's something that could be put in another place too, maybe
He did just say, he said in his update that when these came, was that he's asked Graphic House to add some color so it doesn't look so industrial, because that's the black one. And offered some suggestions on the image in the middle instead of Deb's drawing, and maybe use the drawing in another way, for an
Yeah.
example, in memory of Deb. So I think
Yeah.
he might have had the same thoughts. But, okay.
yeah, I like that idea, and I did like the simplicity of that one.
Very cool.
All right, I will pass it on to him. I will ask him to be at the next meeting, and we can discuss. For the next meeting, Jamie, can you reach out to Lauren and Ed and ask them
Yeah,
why they're not coming, or if they could join us for the next one?
yep, I will.
I mean, I assume Sarah will probably be on the next one, which will give us a quorum, but they haven't showed up for the last couple, so it would be nice, even just online, they can join in like Tom is anytime, so.
Mhm.
Okay, I have one other thing. My husband Andrew and I have decided to donate an additional $4,000 to the park, and it's to cover all of the fencing expenses.
Thank you
So,
so much.
There you go. So that brings a total that we have donated to $19,000. And we are one of the people who would like naming rights. Now, knowing that Brian has been offered this, and he needs to be given a deadline, and we want him to come through with his ideas and his promises. But if he doesn't, or if he can't, and then Andrew and I would like to be considered to have the naming rights. Of course, it's got to go through committees and all of that, and all the proper channels, and we understand that. Nothing works quickly or simply in these sorts of things, but we would like to have that, but Brian definitely is on for the naming rights, and if he can come through, great.
Yep.
That's what we want him to do, but if he can't, we would like to be next in line.
Well, we really appreciate
Yes, you're welcome.
it, very
Well,
much so.
We want this dog park. I don't want to go anywhere else. I don't want to go to Weston. I don't want to go to Rib Mountain. They're too far away. So.
All right.
What you want to do it in Wausau.
Wonderful.
That's our way of doing it.
Well, I think we can, there's definitely a sign going on the fence. I already had it. It's
That's
a
great.
big sign.
Thank you.
The guys have it. They should be putting it up before the snowstorm.
Okay,
That one's already
wonderful.
there, so thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
All right.
It's our pleasure.
I'm
Thank you.
smiling. You just can't tell with my
Yeah,
mouth.
I can tell by your eyes. I've learned to read expressions, to read eyes.
Yeah. All right, well, is there anything further to discuss? If not, then,
I think we can go ahead and adjourn.
We have a guest. Hi,
do you want to
guest.
introduce yourself at all or talk?
You came.
I was here earlier. I'm Tegan. Do I have to say my address?
No,
I don't
not
know.
right now.
I have lived here before, but I just bought my first house this time last year. And I have a dog named Larry. And he is a bit of a celebrity, which is crazy. But we raised a bunch of money for the Humane Society when I was living up north for Forest County. And so I have a dog. I live across from 3M Park. And that's why I'm here, I guess. Because we were talking earlier, I have a very tall, lanky dog who likes to run. And he likes to run hard. And I usually take him to Rhinelander or Anago. So I would like something that I can just take him to here in town
A
instead
little
of.
bit closer.
Yeah, a little bit closer. Though we like those places too, but just a little bit closer and get him out and get me moving as well. So that's why I'm here. I
Great,
have a
thank you.
vested interest.
Oh, thank you
Yeah.
for coming.
I guess I have one other question because it got brought up in our park committee meeting. So, and thank you, Tegan, for staying. Mr. Peckham brought up, as our chair of our Parks Committee, brought up the topic earlier tonight about wanting to move forward on a second dog park, and like a bigger one somewhere, and what we could do with that. So the consensus, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Peckham, but the consensus was we'll kind of look back at those different locations we had looked at, and I will re-resurrect that one about where the underpasses are, and as a possibility too, but if land comes available or if ideas come about, we'll look at pursuing them a little bit, and then it can be something, that we could move forward. There's no funding at this time for one, so we'd have to take that forward for funding. Or I think the other question was that we can maybe send out in an email to you separately, so you don't have to tell me anything right now. But I think the idea was maybe if this committee would be willing to kind of stay on, right? And maybe help pursue something like another one at some point down the line, or be interested in putting that forward, and yeah, by all means.
I would think there'd be some changing of the guard, and we might find some reinvigoration or invigoration of the committee, but the body that has served, I mean, you've learned a lot and kind of know how this goes. And there were comments early on, about the one we had, and where we put it, and how big it was, and, could always do better. And so my response at the time, and it still is, well, that's our first one, and maybe we're going to do another one. So we'd like to have the Park and Rec Committee have the opportunity to decide whether we want to pursue that as a long-term, multi-year goal. And if so, do we have a spot where we'd like to have it? And then there's probably going to be a time where there's not going to be much for a committee to do, but I think it would be good to get that on the table and kind of on the calendar, so something to think about.
Yeah. Wasn't the site underneath the overpasses and the old Menards already have a fence?
It does have a fence, yeah,
Oh, so that's,
for the most part.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it was like 3/4 fenced or something.
okay.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some repairs done to it.
Well, I
but
would imagine there
I have
would
to
be.
re-pull that up because there was some pretty strict requirements, because it's DOT property, and you might know a little bit more of that. But it wasn't completely off the table, so I just have to resurrect it. We had kind of stopped pursuing it by committee's decision because we were going to focus on this one and not move forward right now with that one. But I can look back at my notes and see.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would think there might be some, especially once this one gets open, might be some new blood that would be interested too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay.
All right, anything else? Are we good? Tom, you're good?
I'm good, thank you.
Well,
All right,
Have a great night, everybody.
and we're done. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.